Hello and welcome to my guide for Titania Extreme. If you don't want to spend 4 million years watching someone else's guide, here you go. This setup worked for me. Firstly, break your party down with this macro. This is commonly used in the pug scene right about now, and I'll link this in the description for you to copy and paste. You'll notice the layout in this macro is pretty much displaying the room. You have H standing for healer, MT being the main tank, OTV off tank, M1 and M2 being your melee, and R1 and R2 being your ranged. This macro then shows you the locations you should stand in for puddles. This needs to be organised before you pull. In addition to organising this and making sure you know which puddle you're standing in, make sure that people know which stack marker they are part of, either 1, which is for west, or 2, which is for east. Then you need to mark people 1 through 5 and then the binding chain 1 marker for number 6. This will be the tether order much later into the fight. So once you've done that, let's actually show you what the actual fight looks like and where each of those mechanics comes into play. So as the fight begins, make sure you face Titania away at all times, with everyone else standing behind the boss. The first mechanic you will see is Bright Sabbath. This is your basic raid-wide AoE to heal through if you're the healer. The second mechanic to be aware of is Phantom Rune. This will be a melee safe or a range safe location depending on where you are in the fight's progression. In the first phase she only does the melee safe spot. You can actually tell where this safe zone will be depending on her current animation and stance when she actually casts Phantom Rune. If her wings are outstretched, this will be an AoE in melee which you must stay away from the boss to avoid. Whereas later in the fight you may see her wings closed up tight next to her body. This will mean that you need to be in melee range of a boss to avoid the room-wide AoE. So learn the difference between these AoEs and how you identify each one now, as it will save you time later. After the Phantom Rune in phase 1 you will get a Mist Rune being cast. This is signified by Titania shouting wet wet wet. In reference to the macro we talked about earlier, you'll need to stand in the relevant circles you were assigned previously. You will note here that as H2 I'm then assigned to the northeastern circle in the northeastern part of the room. Stand in these circles until all of the countdown balls fade. It counts down from 10, so do not move before this ends. After the Mist Runes have been stood in, you must then go to either marker 1 or marker 2, depending again on where you were assigned at the start of the fight. I'm assigned here to number 2. This makes the most sense obviously, as I am of course on the eastern side of the platform already from the Mist Rune, so there's less running for me. Try to arrange things similarly to make people's lives easier. Ensure that you're in the actual puddle on the marker area, as you will actually need the water buff it gives you to lessen the incoming damage that Titania will cause with her 2 stack markers that will appear from Flame Rune. There should be equal people on both of these stack markers after you've organised it, and thus you will be able to heal the incoming damage easily with a couple of AoE heals. However, make sure you don't stand too far forward, as you can take damage from both stack marker areas if you're not too careful, and this will of course double the damage and kill you. Divination Rune is the frontal cone cleave that faces where your tank is. Like I said previously, make her face away as much as possible. Next let's talk about Chain of Brambles. This will place a debuff on every player. Wait until the debuff actually appears, and then tanks and healers need to run northwest and the rest of you southeast. This way you will break the brambles as fast as possible. If you fail to break the brambles soon enough, they start pulsing with high damage and can easily kill you after a few pulses. Remember then to only move when the debuff gets put on your character and not before then, otherwise they will not break as they should and you could kill both yourself and your chained partner prematurely. This is especially important later in the fight when this returns. You'll see here that before her phase transition, she will cast another Phantom Rune. This time her wings are tucked in, so the safe zone is now in melee range. The transition will be noticeable by Titania complaining about the cramped castle, and suddenly everything gets turned into a forest. At this point, the next mechanic is the exploding tethers. At the start of a fight, we were given numbered markers for a reason on our heads, and this is that reason. The first person is usually the main tank to grab the tether, which is a beam, and then the off tank, and then so on depending on your order. With this tether then, make sure it's on you and move to the number 1 marker and wait until it explodes. Then the next person in order should come over and stand between the boss and the previous marker player to take the beam. The previous player then moves away before the detonation, and this repeats 6 times, hence the 6 markers we put on players' heads. If you don't move fast enough, hitting multiple people with this explosion will kill them outright. As you saw there, the tank got obliterated due to being late, but this particular attempt still resulted in a kill, and we recovered accordingly. Next up is Phalite. This is actually your tank buster to be aware of. This will place a conal attack on your main tank. This can be split with your off tank to actually reduce the damage, but conventionally somebody will stand there and actually take the damage themselves using a large cooldown, such as Super Bolide for your Gunbreaker or Hallowed Ground, something like that, as you can absorb all 3. Similarly, you can do this with the other tanking cooldowns and coordinate with your healers accordingly. Bear in mind, however, that you can also split the damage with the off tank by swapping if you want to, but it is heavily regarded as just plain easier to use a big cooldown like Super Bolide to just soak it up. Alright, so now you've survived that, we get another chain of brambles, this time with a growth rune, which is a new mechanic. This means that a corner both north and south will be targeted by branches that grow outwards. It's different each time which corner will be chosen. Wait for the bramble chains debuff to appear on your character, and then move to either north again for healers and tanks, and south for everyone else, to where those branches are not. Run to the safe corner until the bramble chains break, and then move immediately back in slightly to the new safe zones. Try not to get caught in the branches, as they do quite a bit of damage and stun you in place. Next up is Frost Rune. This is basically the Shiva mechanic, with you needing to move to the last circle to be drawn on the ground, and then move to the center when that one fades, and then spread out. Heal everyone up here with a heal over time. I usually cast Medica 2 at this point. Spread out and separate the purple markers before they explode to reduce the damage that you're taking. Then, straight after, come back to the boss for another Phantom Rune, which at this point should be a melee safe zone rune, of which you'll need to move fast to actually get into. At this point of the fight, your boss should be about 50% or lower health, and should then switch to the add phase, which is phase 2. This is as simple as killing east, north, and then west adds in that order. The north and west add will need to be tanked in particular, so your tanks need to go and pick those up accordingly, with the one on the east untankable. Kill them as soon as possible in that order, whilst also avoiding the fan AoEs on the ground and separating the purple explosive markers once again as much as you can. Once they're all dead, you will have a few seconds before she revives them into their massive forms. This time around, the north and west adds again need to be tanked, but put out some serious damage, so save something for these adds to survive their various abilities. Meanwhile, the mechanics to avoid are the same as before, but are obviously much bigger, as you can see, and cover more of the room, and ultimately do more damage. During your battle with Mustard Seed, you will actually see a stack up marker as well as some bombs that you need to spread out. Make sure you stack on this player to actually soak the damage to avoid an early wipe. Once Mustard Seed is dead, you'll need to be mindful once again on your surroundings of where you are, as 2 vine walls will actually spawn with a big circle in the center of the room. These vine walls will attack an area in one direction in front of them, with behind being safe. You'll then need to move to the side where the vines won't smash you, with the other group opposite. So again, your tanks and healers need to be north, and the rest of you need to be south. You will at this point have bramble chains once again. When the circle in the center detonates and the vines lash out, you'll be thrown backwards, which is why we took as close to the circle as possible. This should in theory break your brambles automatically upon knockback. Ensure that immediately after the knockback, however, that you move to a safe zone between the AoEs and that your bramble chain has broken. This is pretty much the hardest mechanic to get right, and this is probably where you'll see the most deaths on your attempts. Immediately after this mechanic, 2 players will get purple markers which should run away, and 1 will get a stack marker. Everyone but the purples need to stack on this stack marker to survive. Then, straight after, go back onto those adds. It's very important you keep the DPS up now to kill them all before the power meter on screen fills to 100, whilst again avoiding more AoEs on the floor, be it from the fan AoEs or moving the purple marker bombs away from other players as much as possible. If done correctly, you should kill all of the ads way before the power meter gets to 100. If you didn't, it will kill you with the ultimate she casts. Stack up and heal the incoming damage, and then welcome to phase 3. This is pretty much the point you should be happy to get to with a group, because now you've seen every mechanic she has to offer, only in this phase it's a little bit more random. I will say, however, the next mist rune with the puddles is quite different. Instead, she will actually cast wet circles, but don't move to them immediately. Wait a bit as she actually puts down a phantom rune. If you move prematurely, you could now be dead, with nobody to stand in the puddles. After the phantom rune fades, then you can now move to your puddle positions to stop those ads spawning. Okay, so now the puddles are dealt with, move to either 1 or 2 depending again on your assigned group. This time it's slightly different. Growth rune will return again, which is the reaching branches across the entire room. Wait until the stack markers go out on 1 and 2, and then move clockwise around the room. So number 2, which is usually an east marker, will now move all south. 1, which is usually a west, will now move to a north puddle. If you move in time and stack on the stack markers as you should, heal through the damage, and there you go, you've survived that mechanic. And that's really the last real trick to this fight. Subsequent Bright Sabbath AoEs are there to heal through, more Fey-Light tank busters to go through, where you must use a big CD like Super Bolide again, more Brambles, more Growth runes, and then pretty much a rinse and repeat of Phantom runes, which are depending on her wings being spread out, which means run away, or close to her body, which means to stack on her. Remembering these key mechanics, the only thing left to do is kill her before she enrages. She will eventually at one point start to cast a very slow cast Bright Sabbath. This last slow cast will kill everyone in the room and acts as her enrage. So at this point you might want to invest in some DPS food and polish a few of the mechanics off so you can get your kill. Our first good run in here actually wiped at 0.2% because of just a small lack of focus. It's basically confidence through repetition, and I'm sure you can get it down if you follow this basic guide. It's not especially hard, but can be incredibly rewarding and is a lot of fun in my opinion. Thank you all kindly for watching this video, hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you all next time, hopefully in a Duty Finder.